Hey guys and gals, welcome back to another episode, a Monday night live stream episode of the Constructive Liberty podcast. Tonight I've got with me David Steen, the author of Almost Home, Setting Our Sights Towards Heaven. And we're talking about really getting our priorities straight, as in making sure we're not focused on the things of this world, but seeking things that truly matter. And I'm going to let David introduce himself. Him and I have met recently. We've kind of come to know each other in an online community that we're both in over the last, year or so.
Yeah.
And we actually had a chance to meet here close to Nashville recently at an event that we were both at. And we hit it off. I said, hey, you should come on my podcast and talk about your book. So, David, why don't you give an introduction of yourself? Give a little background about, kind of how young David grew up through the experiences that you had and how it made you the man you are today and kind of where the book came out of. And I know that's a lot to encapsulate,
Yeah, sounds good. I appreciate you allowing me to be on here, Ken. Thanks for letting me join this time with you. My accent probably gives me away. I'm a mostly native guy from Arkansas. My dad was in the Navy and we moved back to Arkansas where mom and dad are from when I was about 7 and, never even remember hardly coming here at all. We'd visited a time or two when I was a kid, but younger than that, but moved back to Arkansas, grew up and not born here, but raised here. And that's been home for me most of my life. And, part of that existence was, we had a typical family of 4, me and my mom and dad and sister, and we lived in the country. Mom and dad bought 10 acres and just did the farm life, everything. Of course, dad worked and, even after getting out of the Navy, but they just, entrenched in us, ingrained in us that desire to live out in the country, to be out in the outdoors. And so that's what
country life is the best.
Yeah. We just loved country life. And so, as I grew up, that's where I learned to work, learned how to drive a truck in a hayfield and long before I had a license to get out there, drive grandpa's truck and just be exposed to all manner of work, more than I ever wanted really,
Yeah.
But it was great. It taught me how to work and gave me a good work ethic and family dynamic. We were raised in church and been around church most of my life, but it really instilled in me the value of family and home. And so that was our good foundation for me. I wasn't always on the right track with that, as so many do, get kind of goofy and wild, in
kind of typical for a young man, especially one that grows up in the country. You find creative ways to get in trouble.
That's right. I sure did. But, I tell you, I grew up in that and was immersed in it and didn't really understand the value of it until, later on, after I became a man and grew up and got into the corporate world. And, I just didn't do everything quite right. I was a Christian, but made a lot of mistakes. And then in my, married young and got divorced young, which was, a huge mistake. But out of that came a lot of education for me, of the hard life and learning things the hard way. But, as time went on in my 20s, got divorced and just didn't really think I'd ever marry again. And so, but in my late 20s, I got on my face before the Lord and gave him, all of me, said, Lord, if this is what you want me to do, put the right lady in front of me. And sure enough, he did. He brought my sweet wife, Katrina, to me. And, she had been through a real similar, upbringing situation, divorce. And, it was almost like we lived 2 parallel stories in 2 separate worlds in Arkansas. And God brought us together in a miraculous way. about 25 years ago. And so this book is, it's kind of a culmination of our story, but it really gets back to, the roots of home, the roots of, what we're all about, particularly our faith and our family and, hard work and pursuing the American dream. And, I've got a copy of the book here. Let me see if I can get that up on camera.
Yeah, there you go.
But so it's almost home, setting our sights toward heaven. And so, it's our story. It's our story of pursuing that American dream. And
talk about that a little bit. What is the American dream today? It seems like it's changed over when that term was originated. Originally, the American dream was, 40 acres and a homestead, and you've got a cow and, ox or whatever mules to farm the land with and all of that. What's the modern American dream, or how do you interpret that?
I think, I even talk about this in the book, but for me, the American dream was to go to school, get an education, get a good job, get a family, and pursue, that career path, find what you're going to do for the rest of your life, and then just dig in and do that, for 40 something years till you retire. And then, when you get in your retirement years, then you just sit back, put your feet up, and, wait for the retirement money to take care of you, which is not biblical at all,
Mm-hmm.
is, just to, do your 30 or 40 years in a company and then just sit back and not do much. But, for me, that dream, included, everybody wants a place to call home, and they want a house. And, one of the things I kind of refer to a lot is that, beyond what you said there of, going out, getting your 40-acre claim of land and just working yourself to death from dawn till dusk. And
it's hard work.
And it's hard work. I can't even imagine what it would have been like to do that, to live like that. But, I think back in that earlier vision of the American dream, there was a lot more sharing. I think you think of the word sharecropping, which is not exactly the same thing, but there was a lot more of people that depended on each other and loved to help each other. And it was really necessary, out in the wilderness, to go out, stake your claim, and then depend on your neighbor on the next 40 acres or what have you to really depend on each other. But this modern American dream is, you think about people that get their house, get a townhouse, an apartment, or whatever it is. They work all day, take the kids to school and back, and take their kids to activities, and then they drive into their garage, put the garage door down, roll up the sidewalks, and go inside and forget the world. That's kind of the modern American dream, I would say.
Yeah, that seems to be how it's gone. And I've wondered, as I came to know that term, the American dream, and this is kind of getting off topic here, but is that something that was sold to us to get us to pursue a certain lifestyle at the benefit of somebody else? Like, back in the mid last century, the dream was to work 30, 40, 50 years at some company, work your way up and get the gold watch and retire.
Yep.
Who does that benefit the most? Definitely the company you're working for, because they have less turnover. They don't have to train new people in. You're building their dream.
Yeah.
And I wonder if, because I think down with 100 people, 100 different people, you're going to get 100 different dreams.
Yeah.
And when we say the American dream, it seems too all encompassing. And I've really started to question where that's come from. But you touched on something a second ago. You talked about you wanted a place to call home, and it reminded me of an article I read recently. I don't remember where I found it, but it talked about somewheres and anywheres. Basically, people who are somewheres are somebody that belong. They have a home. their grandparents grew up there, their mom and dad grew up there, they grew up there. They have somewhere to call home. Now
Yeah.
it seems like we have a lot more anywheres that have no home. They don't have the belonging. They don't have the 4 and 5 generations of connections with the local community. How has that been for you? You said when you were young, you kind of moved around, ended up back in Arkansas. What's that been like trying to build those generational connections that may not have been there?
I think, for me, and everything before we moved back to Arkansas was when I was younger than 7. So not much memory of that, just a little. But, after we moved to Arkansas and got settled into our, existence on our 10 acres and, our cows and, rabbit dogs and, watching the beagles run around. And that was home. That was, we lived right down the road from my grandpa, and he always helped us on the farm and, taught my dad how to do a lot of things he didn't know how to do. And then we, between my grandpa and us was my cousin and his wife and their family, so we did have, some real tight knit community right there around us. And, I've lived, a little more than an hour and a half from them after I moved from home after high school. And, been in a few different places, in a neighboring community, I'd say. But for the most part, I feel like I've had good community with family, not been a long distance from them. And so that's been great. But I'll add to that the place we live now, where on the little 10-acre farm we have, I can look out the window right now and see one neighbor barely, and knowing that neighbor has property on 2 sides of me, great people. And then on the back behind me is his mother's house, and they've been here for decades. And then I could walk out my front porch and I've got another neighbor and his family that live, several hundred yards across the creek, and they own property on 2 sides of us. And they've been here probably since the 1950s.
Wow.
And so, and then,
so they're definitely somewheres.
Yeah. So I am somewheres, and they are, and I'm right in the midst of them. And I've been, enjoying, that kinship with this new community around us. And, I could take that to the next level. We've got a few neighbors down the road that you actually can see, their old home place that they were born in, that's like over 100 years old. It's fallen down. Wow. and it's still there. But then these people have been on, this property for, 70 plus years and never lived anywhere in their life besides that. And so they have a really connected existence. This one farmer that lives up the road that some of my kids work for, every time I get around him, I just enjoy his stories, because he's lived in this community for his whole entire life. And he can tell me all the history of the train tracks and everything that's been built and fallen down. And so he can just really tell you that history. And so that's really the value of being grounded, right where you are, and having family and community right around you. You're just there, and it is somewheres.
Mm-hmm. Are you in the hill country of Arkansas?
We're not. We're kind of in between. The Ozarks are north of the interstate for the most part, which was where I was growing up somewhat. And then we're right between the Ozarks and the Ouachitas. So if I go out the south end of my property, you can see the start of the Ouachita Mountains, and it goes south from there. So we're kind of in between a nice flat spot. I tell you, I'm really, we had our last house was on a hill, and, it was an amazing place. We loved living there, but getting off that hill was wonderful when we found this nice flat piece of ground.
Yeah. When most times when you think of Arkansas, you don't think of nice flat piece of ground. And what made me think of that was you started talking about being able to see your neighbors and neighbors beyond them and stuff. And it's like most places I've seen in Arkansas, you ain't seeing many neighbors. probably because they're on the other side of a ridge or through the holler
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah. Or even, even if you go to the other side of the state, the eastern side of the state, when the mountains cease, it's wide open farmland, just flat as far as you can see, kind of like
Yeah,
Kansas.
down along
And
the Mississippi there.
yeah, and so then you don't see your neighbors because everybody's got, like these hundreds and thousands of acres, plots out there that they're farming. So that
Right.
kind of spreads out the neighbor thing. But
Yep. So the title of your book is Almost Home, Setting Our Sights Towards Heaven. What do you think is, or like, where did that come from? Is that something that, kind of came from a longing for home, or like what brought that title to you?
so when we were growing our family size, we've got 9 kids. We had 2 apiece when we got married. We have 5 together for a total of 9. But as we were growing that family, we built this house that God helped us get together on this hill I was telling you about 20 minutes from where we are right now, and just loved it. We thought that was going to be the house we were going to be in for the rest of our life. We just put a lot of amenities in it that we liked, and huge wraparound porch, and we just had it right there in the middle of the woods, and so we thought that was home. And we, I wouldn't say we would consider ourselves greedy or just just loving it, but I think it did kind of have a little bit of a hold on us, in a way that we just loved the idea of that place being our home forever, on this earth, as long as God was going to have us here. But somewhere between that time when we lived in that place and our time when we sold it, God just really, he told us to sell that house, downsize, let go of a lot of the stuff we'd accumulated. And so he took us on that journey. And as we were signing the papers on this property we live on now, when we found this farm, couldn't even move into place. It was a repo. We got it, and not a dump or anything, but it just needed a lot of work. And as we were signing the papers on that, and I was driving away, God just put on my heart to call this place Almost Home Farm. And the reason was, it was kind of like, well, I like this place, I like the land, but it's got this problem or that problem. We got to get this fixed or that fixed. And it, instead of it being this dream home, that we planned from a blueprint, it was something that we were kind of, settling for in some ways. Right. And so that term just came to me, like, okay, God's given us this place for us to have and blessed us with it, but he doesn't want us to grab hold of it like the other home, so it's kind of like our almost home. And so we just kind of settled into that name, and it's stuck with me since that time to call this place our almost home and not our final home, because
a true halfway house.
Yeah, more like a halfway house, right? So so that really got us thinking. I mean, you grow up in the church and learn, the Christian communication and mindset, for your whole existence mostly. And you always think about heaven and, it's somewhere beyond the blue and all that. But somewhere in that process, God just grabbed hold of our hearts and said, you need to let go of all this stuff. You need to start thinking more like a pilgrim, more like a sojourner, somebody that's traveling through this place that's not really a final citizen, in this earth. And so that's really how we came to come to that name of Almost Home, and getting our mind and priorities in the right direction.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't heard that story before. That's interesting. How did life change for you, or how do you see the difference in lifestyle between someone who has their sights set on heaven versus somebody who doesn't, who's set on earthly things, or pursuing the physical versus the spiritual?
I think for us, it's doing our best to not accumulate, a whole lot of toys, all all manner of everything around us that keeps our attention. You see most people in America, in the modern world, are in debt up to their eyeballs. They got every toy imaginable. They got, 2 cars in the driveway that have payments. They got a boat payment. They got a trailer payment, payments, in debt. And, that makes them be consumed with making money, to have to keep up with all that stuff, keeping up with the Joneses. Right. And so, it's having that freedom of not accumulating all this stuff and not being so attached to it that you care more about your stuff than you do about your family or your neighbors or other people in need. And that also frees you up to be a giver, to be able to help somebody. And, when you're the type of person that just grabs hold of everything you've got and holds on tight, never wants to let go of it, you're less likely to be the kind of person that wants to help and give and be a, consistent giver.
Right. What happens when somebody gets caught up in that system of consume, have the boat, have the nice car? You see people that are like that consume, we call ourselves consumers because that's what we do, is we tend to consume everything. And we will always want more. When you get caught in that cycle, there's still people that seem to have that giving spirit. But kind of what happens to somebody over time as they keep going on that hamster wheel of more? And how can we avoid that?
Get out of debt. That's the simple answer. But to follow up on that, we look around and we're always comparing ourselves to our neighbors. When I moved on this property, my first thought was, well, I got all this property. I got to buy a tractor. I got a farm. I got to own a tractor. Right. And I have yet to buy a tractor. I've been on this property for, over 6 years, haven't bought a tractor. And, we're doing just fine because, I kind of had that gut feeling when we moved here. Oh, well, I got to have that. It's going to be something we can use. And so you just kind of jump into, something like that and think, well, even if I have the money, to buy that tractor, should I? Do I need that? And so, we look across the fence, we look across the field at our neighbors and all their stuff. And we get into that cycle of thinking, well, they got a tractor, so I got to have one. Well, you know what? Because I didn't buy a tractor, I get to communicating with my neighbor that lives, in one direction. And I think the first year we really needed our field cut down. And so he comes over and he's like, well, you need to cut your field. Just come over and borrow my tractor. And so we did that. And then another neighbor in our other field comes over and he said, do you mind if I come over and hay your field? And I said, no, I don't mind at all. And so, it kind of, if I had done that, if I had gone out, bought the tractor, just, mowed this place like a, golf course and just kept it all manicured, I would have missed out on that blessing from 2 neighbors that want to help me. And so these are the kind of traps we get in, with accumulating things and trying to do things in our own strength. And ideally what happens is you get in that wheel, you get running that race, and, you wear out, your wife wears out, all your kids wear out, and it strains your relationships. It makes you feel like you need to work more than you normally would to keep up with all these payments. And you alluded to something a little earlier about, well, so what's wrong with having these nice things? Nothing at all. But you have to keep it in context, and you have to make sure, that these are the kind of things that you can handle and maintain and take care of. And are you supposed to have, this, that, or the other? And so you just have to, maintain that balance. You know, the word says, money is the root of all evil, right? No, the word says
Nope.
the love of money is the root of all evil. And so we have to, put that into perspective with everything we do and every purchase. And, doesn't mean we got to be, frugal, totally thrifty people that never spends a penny on anything. It just means we're supposed to be amazing stewards, with everything that God's given us.
Talk a little bit about your farm. Is your farm your job, or like, where do you go, or do you have a job or a business? How do you provide for your family there?
So that is a good long story that I've written a book about, but the long and short of it is, we moved out here with, kind of an entrepreneurial spirit, like we were going to really just dive in, do some things, create some business income. Never run a business before, and still trying to figure that out. But the grand experiment was we had our 5 youngest kids at home with us, and we moved onto this place, had some nice fencing and, a lot of opportunity. And so we were like, okay, let's let you experiment as a entrepreneurial farmer, in a lot of ways. So we had a bottle calf. We've had rabbits, goats, chickens, ducks, guinea fowl. Right now we've got sheep, and my daughter's got a dog breeding business that she's working right now. And so to answer your question, no, this is not my income, but it's been an amazing experiment to try different things and see what works. A lot of the kids grew crops in their gardens. We gave them their own garden patch and said, here, grow this and grow that, and we'll go down and sit on the square at the nearest town and, sell cucumbers and squash and whatever else you raise. And so they got to learn that, and they did all the work and got to receive their reward as well. So that was a learning experience. But to answer the income part, I worked in the corporate world for about 28 years and, at the same company. And toward the end of that course of events, our company mindset was getting a little bit more sour in my mind. I'd been there, for a long time. We got bought by a large corporate conglomerate that, kind of started changing the culture a little bit. And I was just ready for a change. I'd started working on my writing career. I did a lot of writing as a product manager in my last role there. And so we were praying for a way out and an opportunity to step out of that corporate environment. And one of the things that really helped us in that process after we bought the farm was being able to get debt free. And so we that was a huge step for us to get everything paid off and to own it all. And, doesn't mean all the bills go away. You still got to pay for electric, water, insurance, and taxes and food and all that good stuff. But it sure does relieve the pressure, and
it does. It's a huge weight off.
Yeah. So it takes a huge weight off. And so through that, that process of getting out of debt, walking away from my corporate life with a little bit of severance pay and some savings we'd accumulated, we're in a grand experiment right now of me becoming a full-time writer. And so we've
Awesome.
got the book out, got it ready. I'm in the process of marketing and developing that and getting it launched later in the fall. The official launch is October the 3rd. And another way that really helped us to be able to do this is, my wife had been a homeschool mom for most of our marriage, been taking care of the kids, a homemaker, and loved it and enjoyed doing that. But after my corporate career ended, right about the time when some of my income had dried up, God put somebody in my wife's path that said, hey, I got somebody that needs help with some elder care. And my wife really had a heart for that and jumped into that. And so now she's been taking care of 2 different couples for the last little over a year. And it's kind of helped sustain us and keep us afloat. as we figure out our next steps. So it's really just been a faith walk, to trust God, wait on Him, and figure this out as we go. And it's really been a wonderful journey. Don't have it all figured out, and still.
I don't think we ever do.
But as far as having piles of money or anything like that, no, we don't. But we're waiting on the Lord and working through this process and growing this business and learning as we go. And it's just been a blessing.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Where can somebody find you to follow, keep up with the launch of the book, and is it available for pre-order, or when does that come out?
It is available for pre-order. You can go to almosthomebooks.com, almosthomebooks with an S at the end.com. And that's my website. You can go there. You can pre-order the books for the launch for October the 3rd, and that's when they'll ship. They're on all the major sites, wherever you like to buy stuff online for books. And there's also a link on there if you go to the books tab of my website to be able to order a signed copy for me. So I've got advanced author copies right now that you can go there and have a signed copy sent to you. And also, on the website, there's several different places for you to join the community, get connected via email. And so we'd love to connect with anybody. Just started a blog that we're going to be doing. So, I'm not done with writing. So this is just the beginning of the journey, getting this book out. So we're going to be putting blogs out on a consistent basis, trying to continue our story and the things we're doing. And so if anybody wants to keep up, they can go to that website and get connected with email. We'll get you on an email.
And that's Almost Home Books, or what's the website for the blog?
Yep, it's almosthomebooks.com.
Okay.
Yep, and
awesome.
We're on Facebook and LinkedIn as well. So
super. Anything else you'd like to share with us before we wrap it up tonight?
I tell you what, I really liked what you and I were talking about earlier about getting your priorities straight. That's really what this is all about. It's about whose stuff all this is, and that we're stewards of it. And the sooner a person realizes that in this life, the more peace they're going to have in knowing who they belong to and whose all this stuff is, and getting our sights set in the right direction on heaven.
I love it. Thank you, David, so much for your time tonight.
All right. Thanks a lot, Ken.